Hi, I'm Miss Leigh, and I work for the Central Florida Boys and Girls Club, and I teach art. And today what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over one of my favorite things to do, which is do toothpick art. And it's very easy, and it's a blast. Okay, what you want to do first is get your materials together, and I always like to cover my table with something. So I've got my table covered with a piece of white paper. That way you don't get mom or dad's table full of glue or anything like that. So what you will need, of course, is toothpicks. You're also going to need glue. I prefer to use a low temperature glue gun, but if you don't have that, get some of the clear Elmer's glue. This is very kind of goopy. It's not as watery as the white Elmer's glue, so this is going to work well for you. However, you just have to be a little bit more patient. It's going to take longer for things to dry using this glue. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate using a hot glue gun. The first thing you want to do is decide what you're going to do for your base. Okay, so if this is probably a little too small for a base and it's a lightweight block, if it had a little more weight to it, I could probably build up my toothpicks and I would be okay. But this isn't very heavy, so if I was building too high, it's probably going to tip over. So this is probably not the best base for me to use. This is another piece of wood that I picked up that I really like for a base. And the reason that this is good is that it's long. So when you build up, you've got that balance there. Plus it's extra long with these edges on here. So I have a really good sturdy base there for me to do my toothpick sculpture. Okay, two other ideas. These are really big bases. So I have this nice little block, which is actually a fence post that was cut up. So this, of course, I have a big area for me to build my toothpicks on, and it's extremely sturdy. And the only difference between these two is this is just half the height. But again, it's a very sturdy, heavy block, and it's going to be great for your toothpick sculptures. You can probably find stuff anywhere. Check out what your parents have. You might have a block of wood out in the garage, but just make sure that your base is pretty sturdy and you have a good section to work on. Okay, so what you can do is think about what you want to do. This is kind of a hard sculpture for you to plan ahead, but you can kind of think, what do I want to do with it? Okay, now it's kind of hard to go ahead and put a toothpick down straight up, and I'm gonna give you an example of that. Okay, I'm gonna put a little bit of hot glue there, and you're gonna notice the hot glue dries very quickly, but you can see that it's still pretty wobbly there. But what I can do is give it just a few minutes for it to dry here, or a couple seconds, and I could create a teepee type thing. Okay, so you can see I'm having a little bit of a challenge here, but I can go ahead and make a teepee by adding another toothpick with some glue. Okay, and then adding some glue in the middle here, and I'm getting really close to my finger, and you really don't want to do that with hot glue because it gets hot. But I did put a little bead of hot glue there to hold the two together. And I'm just gonna go ahead and hold this just for a second to get it to stay. And I can see that my base of my original toothpick is kind of pulling away, so I'm gonna add a little bit more to that. Okay? So this is not what I would suggest. This isn't the best way to start a sculpture. I'm gonna go ahead and add my third one in here. And this is like the little teepee type sculpture that I'm making. Okay, so that is going to hold that up as a base. Okay, so you can see that. And I of course need to put a little glue there in the middle to get all three to wrap together. Now the one downside of using hot glue is that you get what I call cobwebs. So you can see all these little cobwebs that are on here, but what you can do is after you're done with your sculpture and it's nice and dry and put together, you can always take those cobwebs and just pull them off. Okay, so I can continue from here and go ahead and build up my sculpture. But this isn't really the idea, you know, doing it in thirds or using the very end of it is not the best idea. A better idea, and I'm going to use my nice big base, is I'm going to go ahead and use shapes. And as you can see, what I did is I already glued together a bunch of cool shapes. I've got my my triangles, I've got some squares here, and I even have a parallelogram here. And this is kind of a cool way to start your sculpture. Now I'm not going to go flat on here. I'm going to kind of go at an angle. I'm going to angle it. I'm going to put a big bead of glue there, and I'm going to put it at an angle, okay? And I'm going to let that dry. Eventually it's going to dry. And like I said, hot glue dries very quickly. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same over here on this side. Okay. All right. And once that gets dry, and it's getting close, I'm going to go ahead and put another shape in here, sort of to hold that shape up. Okay. Let's see, it usually works a little bit better than this. So I'm going to put another shape in there. There we go, for balance. So I'm going to add a little glue in there to glue the parts together. Okay. And like I said, we'll get rid of our cobwebs later. Okay. I'm going to glue the base down on here. On both sides. And then the cool thing is we can start building up. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to add another shape onto here. So I'm going to put a little blob of glue in here. And again, keep in mind this dries so fast. So all I'm going to do is balance that there. Do you see how it's just balancing? And I'm going to hold my hot glue there for just a few seconds because it dries so quickly. And look at that, it's already staying, okay? So then what I can do is I can add yet another shape. So let's go over on this side, and I'm gonna turn it sort of to the side here, put it down on the glue. While I'm holding that, I can get rid of some of my cobwebs there, okay? And you can see that, yep, it's not quite dry yet. Okay, but here we go. That's how quickly it dries with the hot glue. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add. And this, now I'm going to kind of look at it and go, what do I want to do next? Do I want this? What direction do I want this to go in? I think I want to go that way. So I'm going to go ahead and put my little hot glue dab here. I'm going to put the edge of it on the side here. Let that stay. And then of course I have to connect it to this one over here. So I'm going to put a little dab of hot glue there and let it glue down to that as well. Okay, and then like I said, hang on while you're hanging on to it, you can get rid of those crazy little cobwebs that you get from the hot glue. I did have one student at East Altamont make one, and all the hot glue webs, his actually ended up looking like a boat with sails, and all the webs looked like the ropes. So that turned out really, really cool. I liked how that turned out. So I've got one more section here, and I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bead on there, and I'm gonna add my last section here. And let that, I'm gonna hold it so that I can make sure that it dries up there. We're pretty close here. The bigger the blob of glue you put on, the longer it takes to dry. And that makes sense, doesn't it? But it also holds better. Okay? So there you go. So this was a very small, very quick sculpture that we did. And there are so many cool things that you can do when you're doing toothpick sculptures. Go ahead and Google it if mom and dad will let you. Just go ahead and go to Google and put in toothpick sculptures, and you'll see all sorts of cool ideas that people have done. Have fun.